that's like that we can like try and learn from. So that's the big idea. And we'll see how it goes. But we this is feel free. We definitely want input on like what was good, what helped, what you thought this might be, what you hope this could be. That's all very much at play. So so I wanted to so the story that we want to tell is just after the professional learning experience over the summer. Sarah Blechacz. Oh man, I don't have like of course my notes aren't on the screen. Uh
Got it.
From Wauwatosa and Rachel Duellman. They have been working for a couple years on an OpenSciEd implementation, and they have gone through the whole process of reviewing and comparing options, of piloting and adopting together. And it's been a coaching centered model, and a team centered model, and they're going to talk more about that. And what happened, and we'll talk about kind of what happened as we got together and looked at like, okay, how might AI help with some of the things that are actually some of the pain points here. So we'll start with Sarah and learn more about that story, and then we'll get into hands-on stuff too.
Thanks. Yeah, so Rachel's going to kind of help me describe some of this part. But yeah, thanks for introducing. So I'm Sarah. Rachel's on here too. As said, we support science in the Wauwatosa School District, and we've been piloting OpenSciEd. So we'll kind of describe what led us, where have we been and what led us to this partnership, and kind of then roll into what we've created and how we think it might help elsewhere.
So we wanted to start with some data because we can describe all these really cool things, but if we don't have anything to show to say this is what we've accomplished, it doesn't really matter, right? So we wanted to start with some data around our grades. So we know this is kind of an internal metric. We're justifying these grades on our end. So we also will share some external data as well. But disproportionality in our data is something that Wauwatosa is really important to us in figuring out ways to support all learners to have access to a rigorous curriculum and to achieve mastery of the grade level standards. So if you look at the left chart, this is in 23-24, you'll see our Black students, our white students, and then just like our average grades. So about 49% of our Black students were achieving mastery. Do you want to go back one slide? Thank you. And this year we have about 57% of our Black students achieving mastery. So by our own internal metrics, we definitely are seeing a growth, and you'll notice for our white students, it stayed the same. So it's not at a deficit of any other group, right? We are supporting all learners to master grade level standards. We notice that we still obviously have some D's and F's there that obviously we want to try to close that as well, and reduce that. But obviously in school, lots of things change at one time, right? So OpenSciEd isn't the only thing that changed with our grading system. Other things have changed as well. But we do want to recognize that these Fs that we have now are not the same Fs we used to have, because we've increased the bar, we've increased the rigor, we've increased like even what the like grade point average is to get an F, that's increased. So there's actually more kind of opportunity in the grading scale now to receive an F. So now if you'd advance to the next slide, we want to just put like a little asterisk there to say that even though we do have, a failure rate that we're not super excited about, we're also seeing this mastery on these really high level rigorous tasks. So you'll see here some bio examples of some design solutions, which is something we have never assessed before in the past. You'll see some modeling, which again, probably was not assessed in like actually creating models. It was more like, here's a model, answer a bunch of multiple choice questions about this model. So kids are getting blank sheets of paper now and are writing 1-2 pages as assessments, right? So much more reading and writing involved in these. And then I did say, so externally, we haven't been doing OpenSciEd for that long. So this is, as soon as we get pre-ACT data, I know Sarah and I are like anxious to get our hands on it. So we will share as soon as we have it. But if you compare 22-23, which is when we weren't doing OpenSciEd, to 23-24, when we were, and you look at the growth over time. So the left column has all of our students from, we have 2 campuses, we have East and West, 9th and 10th graders. That's all of their data. So you're seeing that our Black students from 2022 to 23, 23, 24 have performed worse cumulatively on pre-ACT in science. If you just pull out the students that experienced our first year with OpenSciEd, so we were piloting, this was the first year we were doing the curriculum. If you just pull out their data, that's their data on the right there. So our Black students are way overperforming their peers that are in other courses in science in OpenSciEd. And you'll see that again, there's been no deficit to any other group. All groups have improved more than kind of the standard across the cumulative data.
Yeah, so kind of then thinking about what helped us get to that point and what helped us succeed, we really think it was our process and approach that we took in implementing. So really, we had a very extensive review process. We had external experts come and join us and do an audit of our programming. And that really helped us have a solid foundation to kind of prove, I guess, the why the need for change. We put together a really diverse team to review, including all stakeholders, teachers, administrators, community members, everybody. We leaned in really hard to professional learning around like best practices with NGSS. And then since then, we have really just taken very strategic actions that continue to support this vision that we set. So our vision from the beginning was clear, unwavering, and we just kind of kept trying to build this momentum for change. Then all of the decision making from that point on was aligned to that vision, and we've just kind of stayed consistent to that ever since. OpenSciEd as the curriculum that was chosen was a huge piece of our success. Just seeing that data that Rachel showed, I mean, that really speaks to the power. And alongside that, we also made changes to detrack our courses. So previously we had advanced and regular versions of biology, chemistry, physics. We removed those advanced courses. I'm doing that in air quotes because we didn't, in part of the audit showed that there wasn't really any discernible difference between the advanced and regular courses other than who was in them. So putting the students all in the same group and giving them this high level rigorous curriculum, we believe has really made a huge difference for our students. We also took an approach with our curriculum implementation to try to stick as close to the curriculum as possible. That's kind of that trust the process approach, especially the first time through before making any significant changes or tweaks and then potentially like shooting yourself in the foot. So that has been a really positive thing for us. We've also tried to continue to engage administrators, our counselors, and families along the way with lots of communication, just so that everybody's on the same page and kind of understanding the change, the why behind the change, and any adjustments that we are making along the way with grading and things like that. And then also our approach to professional learning has really been very much consistent with the approach of the style of OpenSciEd, where we're learning by doing. And so we're meeting people where they're at. We're fortunate in our district to have myself as a district level administrator who's overseeing just science. That's a huge benefit. And then also Rachel as an instructional coach who is supporting really, really intensely our biology and chemistry teams, as well as supporting the building. But having her consistent presence has helped us also achieve what we've been able to achieve so far. And we've also intentionally really tried to build this culture of risk taking, and so that teachers feel confident that they're not going to get in trouble if something doesn't go completely perfectly the first time. And so we feel all of those things really have set us up for a very solid start. So we want to name that because we recognize like we have, as a pretty large district for our area, more resources than others may have. And so we think we actually got pretty far before hitting a wall, essentially. So if you want to switch to the next slide, that's kind of like the kind of why or how did we come to partner with Eddo. And so we happened to meet at the OpenSciEd training last last summer. It was only last summer, in Green Bay, through Einstein Project, and just like was really curious about what was what could be the potential with AI. So that was kind of in the background. We knew that this was happening. And so then when some of these challenges started to surface, where we did sort of feel like there were things we wanted to do where we felt like we weren't being as optimal as possible, and we started to wonder if AI might be able to help. So really the first thing that prompted me to reach out was really just actually coming out of something with 8th grade, where we were seeing just like a little bit of stalling out of discussions, and student engagement. And we had talked at one point in the summer about like maybe there was some technology that could help get some of that started, so the students could like refine their thinking a little bit before they engage in the discussions in real life. So that kind of prompted the initial reach out, but then through conversation, just some other challenges, and we know these are not unique just to us. We've heard this from lots of other people who are trying to implement OpenSciEd across the country. Is just that like this is such a huge shift for teachers. So really the amount of time that is spent grading, because like the tasks, like the student samples, you saw just like one piece of an assessment where students are writing a lot. So it's a big shift, especially for us coming from a pretty traditional approach to teaching science, where previously it was like multiple choice questions and it could just be really graded like in a snap. So now to shift instructionally and with our assessments just so abruptly, that like timeliness of trying to get great things graded and get feedback to students was becoming really hard. So that was something that we thought, maybe AI could actually help us with, and especially around the formative data, because we really were trying to give that feedback as quickly and efficiently as possible to give students the best opportunity to learn from their mistakes and continue growing through all of these more, iterative skills-based assessments. And so that kind of led us down this path of, well, maybe there are some things we could try. And so we started to do some of that with our team. And we're excited to show sort of what came out of that, because it was pretty powerful.
Before we get into this part, first of all, thank you, Chad, for noting that Sarah, congratulations are in order. Sarah was named Administrator of the Year by Wisconsin Society of Science Teachers. You weren't going to tell us that, were you? But
No.
congratulations, Sarah.
Thank you.
But before we move on, any questions so far about, from Wauwatosa's perspective, their implementation, any of the pieces that you heard about, the data they collected?
I did wonder myself actually, about you tracked a couple groups, young women, 2 girls. Did you see any difference too? I'm kind of concerned about that. I've seen some stuff at my school where I think there could be a better job in that area, and just curious if you happen to at least see some of that information, or.
Yeah, I don't have that data at my fingertips. Sorry, in a school building. Okay. I don't think we've ever had a huge gap in gender in science as far as actual performance in classes. I think it's more about enrollment in classes, right? There's certain demographics overly represented. But there's definitely something I could try to dig into a little bit more.
And your expansion, it just got green lighted to go bigger, right?
In what, or for
of
what? Sorry.
going to hands-on and inquiry-based learning, like across the board. It was STEM for all or something.
Oh yeah. So yeah, we are making there's lots of other kind of shifts. Like we were able to first make some changes. Science was like up for an audit, but then also the STEM program was audited. And so there have been some shifts. And so we're excited. Next year, we're moving to this kind of new vision of STEM for all. So we're introducing an elementary special course that's called Discovery Lab. And so all the students, the same way that they would get like art and music and things, in addition to their science that they have as like, science as a part of their day, they will also now go to a STEM special. So we're intentionally building in some of this skills building at an earlier age so that hopefully as these students continue moving their way up through our system, they're going to keep coming better and better prepared to do the types of things that we have them doing in these high school OpenSciEd courses and beyond.
Yeah, and so when we think about hitting the wall, that's another interesting piece is like as you go into elementary school, what are the different barriers for, you know, the teachers in those classrooms who maybe didn't specialize in science, probably didn't, and kind of and hosting those experiences. Very cool. So, I want to talk a little bit about kind of how we work together, and it's going to sound familiar, Chad and Kim at the Einstein Project, because we've taken some of the design thinking world principles and brought them into how we think about how to co-create some of these solutions that are part people, part technology. And so I want to share a little bit like of kind of a path that we found by sensing and responding. And it actually, so a little bit of storytelling and a little bit of kind of like what we went through, and then we'll get to get our hands dirty trying it. So, we mentioned some kind of like how we got together, and the discovery process. So in the preparing for the professional learning workshops last year with the seed grant, we started a discovery process, and Kim participated both as a learner and as a participant in the discovery process. And essentially, like there is there are protocols like what we do in the classroom that are around how do we figure out like what is going on for folks, what are their needs, and what are the opportunities that we can use to like, you know, build something for them. And so when Wauwatosa and our team got together, that's a lot of what we did was talked about their adoption, what's going well, and sort of all those things that we just mentioned about some of the walls we were hitting. And then kind of the question that we had was like, okay, well, what if you just did some AI wrangling? And so like probably everybody has someone in their lives that they know that is like the way they use ChatGPT is a little bit extra compared to anyone else. And I am usually the one in any room that is like that. And so that's kind of what we talked about. Like, all right, like what would you, if you really just had a thing that did it, what would it do? And so the first thing we did was and we did this, we had tried this over the summer with the Einstein Project. We just like grabbed stuff we wanted to analyze as images. So we had like scans of student writing, and we just grabbed those and tried to see if we could even just like get the words off that page and make it easier for us to use that. And so we did a first batch there where we just were like nothing was built. We used I used ChatGPT and some other thing, you know, some other tools, but basically just went at the problem. And it's something that anybody can do is just like try to like do some of these tricks with ChatGPT or Claude and see if you can kind of get some of the stuff you need out of it. The next thing we did was really interesting because we got together, the PLCs were meeting regularly. And so we took some of what we had so far and showed it to folks. You know, some of what we did was like try to summarize what we'd scanned, or to like point out like, oh, we see these patterns for misconceptions, or like maybe these activities are worth emphasizing. Or another thing that it helped us to do was pull out exemplars and say like, here's like a typical 4 answer or a typical 3 answer. And you'll see more of that in a minute. But this is still very much, nothing is like really repeatable or like a process yet. We were just trying to like almost embed and figure out like what are the problems. And that led us to more experimentation. And we were able, and you'll see more of kind of like how we reflected on that and figured out what was working, what wasn't. And then we tried to kind of move towards like, well, what could we do next? And in this case, what we did is we do have a grant proposal that we may hear about anytime soon, but it is a federal program, so we'll see. That is a chance for us to maybe build on that and build this into a tool that teachers and students can use in the classroom. So that's kind of what the framework, what the collaboration framework has looked like so far. Some things that we noticed so far is that, you know what, I'm going to show this after we play with it. Okay. So next thing to do is everybody can participate, or I'll share so you can follow along. The site is apps.eddolearning.com. So if you want to do your own clicking, go ahead and just open up a new window, apps.eddolearning.com. And if it's not already in the chat, I bet that Joel is typing it right now for everybody. And if you're doing it right, you'll see something like this. And you can see that we've got a little spot here where we can put more of these, but we're going to go to this first one, analyze student work. And you'll have to scroll up and then I'll kind of walk through this with everybody. Okay, so I can see a bunch of screens. So give me a thumbs up if you are either following along the way if you're following along the way you want to. And maybe this if you just like need another second. All right. So following along the way you want to, you're either with me on the screen or you're trying it. At the end, you might actually want to get here too. Okay, so some of you will recognize this assignment. It's from OpenSciEd Biology, Unit 2, I think, Lesson 6. And it's the whole unit has like the zombie fire thing going on. So Lesson 6 is where students are writing an explanation, and the explanation has two parts to it. Essentially, that there's photosynthesis process in there, there's a cellular respiration process in there, or decomposition. And so what students are asked to do is, hey, take what you learned so far and write a pretty good explanation referring to how you learned the stuff, like the experiments and all that. So this is the team had put together kind of a guide to this assignment. And what we did was we grabbed this as it was with, again, I think Rachel and folks put this together, and there's a rubric here for what like a 4, a 3, a 2, and a 1 mean. There's some examples, sentence starters, and there's also like a checklist. I think I saw this in some places, it might be in the OpenSciEd book as like gotta haves. But like a checklist of like required criteria. And so that's the first step we took of like setting this up and figuring out how to process the student work. And then the next thing we did was we actually ran a bunch of student work samples, and you can see them here. There's this teacher separated the assignment into 2 parts. And so one is about matter and energy. The second one is about what will happen if the temperature rises. So students were answering the question in 2 parts, and you can see this data set here. You can even expand it and see all like the full student response. And what we did first was we ran it through, we ran AI against it, and basically just asked for each assignment, gave it the instructions, gave it what the student said, and asked it to give feedback. What are some areas, what are some of the strengths seen in the assignment, and what are some areas for improvement? So we ran that against the whole data set. And so there's like 100 something rows here. We also asked it to try to score it. I think these, I can't remember. I think these are teacher scores. So these are like our reference scores. So don't worry about that right now. So then we just kind of wanted to say like, all right, what can we learn from this as a whole data set? We've got like over 100 responses here. We're about to get together and talk about like how are we doing on these, what are we learning from it? And so we ran that whole data set into almost like, think of it as a ChatGPT window of like, I think I actually did it in a ChatGPT window. So what I did was I said, okay, here's a discussion guide example. And actually, this is derived from one, Rachel, that you shared with me. And I said, here's an example of like how we want to talk about this data. And here's the data. So, make a guide for us, from this student data. And so this is the response that we got back. And so you can see like it goes, it's trying to follow the instructions we gave it. So, observation patterns, common strengths, clear explanations of the role of peat formation in Arctic conditions. And then you can see areas for improvement, maybe organization and clarity are worth focusing on. Go looking more at the summary. It gave some recommendations for like how we can intervene, like sharing the sentence starters, working on like attaching evidence to claims, etc. And so that is an example of like one way that as a team we tried to like take the student data and use some AI like crunching to help us like guide how we have our conversations together as a team. What now actually, so this is good. I'll do the notice and wonder and then I'll let you guys play. So some of the things we noticed from this is that the generated feedback was actually really good. It not only like it took a little bit of, I remember it took a little bit for me to get the AI to address the student and not write about the writing. So to say like, oh, you said this and you tried this. Well, how about trying this? So I did a little bit with the prompting to get that. But once we did, they were pretty good and they were strengths based. And I think I remember even the team saying like, oh, like my feedback got better after I saw some of these examples because I started to see like, oh, this is how I can, encourage the student, write about this strength and then in this area for improvement. I saw Sarah and Rachel nod, so I'm going to pause for a minute if you want to like that anecdote of like what teachers got from seeing the examples.
Yeah, I'm thinking of one teacher in particular. She is really smart. She knows a lot of science. And sometimes when students are generating really open responses, it's hard for her to see through maybe some of the writing skill or lack of writing skills that students have to really figure out what kids are trying to communicate, right? Sometimes when they're ninth graders, there's a little level of interpretation we have to do as adults to read their writing. And that was really challenging for her. She right away like that's not right, or that's not right, or this isn't clear. And so she just wanted to give a lot of zeros. And so even the focus on like it telling her like, here's a strength for this student really helped her like, oh, I do see that actually, right? Instead of I coach her a lot on that just individually, but having something do that really efficiently and quickly was helpful for her.
Yeah, and I saw this from the point of view of trying to judge the AI too. Like there were times when an issue was like just not getting enough from the student. And we actually found that when we tried to score with the AI against the rubric, it was hard to get consistent results from the AI. Some examples were very easy to grade, and the human grade and the AI grade matched, and the AI would get it the same every time. That was true for some, but for some of them, there was maybe like one criterion that was a gotta have it, that like the AI was ready to forgive sometimes, but not always. And like, so the same sample could be a 1 or a 3. It was like, that was really interesting. And it made us think a lot about the criteria too, right? Like, how intelligible is our rubric? And do we really know how we're guiding it? And so we played with that quite a bit. And didn't end up sharing that with students at all. But the feedback was so good that in some cases, the teachers, I think, like curated it, but shared that feedback back to students. And we did have a discussion about like, well, the feedback might not be perfect, but like pretty good feedback this week or today, tomorrow is really different than like, I took all the time to give really thoughtful feedback to every student, but it took me 2 weeks to really turn it all around. And we did see gains in students' proficiency. And one of the that brings me right quickly to the wondering on this is like, we actually saw gains in student proficiency across the board. And as you can see, we took like a little sample first, and then we took a 2 classroom sample, but not every student did not get feedback in the same pattern of like immediate. And so clearly some of the gains that we were seeing was maybe the teachers and their practice and talking about it and seeing these examples and kind of the problem solving together. And possibly some of it was from other things that we were doing as a team that had nothing to do with the AI, nothing to do with this process. So that is something we're curious about in the future. And then the other one is like we started small, then we did more classrooms, but very quickly, even this like ad hoc tool was like starting to be like, well, how would I do this? How would every teacher do this, right? Like, how would we all do it, regardless of our comfort level with the computers and with how we can like some teachers were using Google Forms to capture the student writing, and that made it a lot easier for us to process it, to go through and take snapshots of all the samples across like 400 something samples would have taken more time. So that was one of our things too, is like, how do we make this more usable? And then we also have this thought about like the that I mentioned, like when there's inconsistency in this grading, is it the instructions? Is it that the AI is just not consistent with it? Will the AI improve? And then I actually have some interesting, like one of the things I noticed is that in general AI, this kind of AI is gullible. So like I think probably if you said you explained something in your writing, the AI would be like, it sounds like they explained it, and like you kind of get credit for like we all as a teacher know it, right? When kids coin the terms, right? But like maybe they didn't show that they understand how those fit together. The AI seemed kind of a little bit gullible on that. So that was one of the things that we were curious about. And you know, like when we think about it as teachers, right? Maybe even having the AI in the role of the student teaching the AI. No, that's not really a good explanation. Would be an interesting way to do it.
What you're if I can jump in, what you're kind of naming there, Matt, is this idea that like we just intuitively know the capabilities of our students. So a student who has struggled the whole day to get anything done is not going to all of a sudden show up with a like massive vocabulary and ability to write these things. I wonder if there's a way for the teacher to pair literacy, math data, like we have all this data on these kids. We know roughly what their ability level should be. Obviously, just 1 or 2 numbers is not enough to totally define a kid, but if the model knows that when it's grading a piece of work, that could be a approach to solving that problem, I suppose.
No, yeah, that's really interesting. I have been thinking about that, you know, yeah, like building the context quickly as like one of the opportunities. And that's an interesting way to think about it. It's also interesting to think about like, well, like you mentioned, you're kind of drawing on evidence outside of the writing, right? So it's like as a teacher when you're even just reading a student's work. So that's interesting too, you know, because the AI like you really know what its context is, and what pieces of those are like, you know, like are like context we should add. What pieces are like, well, we don't have that context, so we can't make that judgment yet, and we should kind of push towards gathering more evidence. That's really cool. All right, so I want to give people a chance to try this. So if you head back to apps.eddolearning.com, there is a chat box here at the bottom, and you can ask questions of this data set. So you know, there's some examples here, like you might ask about misconceptions. You might ask for examples of high scoring responses, or, you know, ask for an activity that could be used to improve student understanding. But I am curious to see what y'all will ask. So give it a try. And let's take at least 5 minutes of people trying it. And you can like yeah, like if you find something interesting, I think it'd be really interesting to hear some examples of what stuff people tried. But let's try like 5 minutes of like just play with the tool. I'll do one, but like feel free to like hop in here at apps.eddolearning.com and just ask a question of this data set, these student work samples. And I'll go quiet, but feel free to use the chat.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's 5 minutes. With your hand, show me thumbs up if you're all done, or like a stop sign if you could use another couple minutes to try something. All right, cool. So so we'll pull the conversation back together again. There were some great notice and wonders in the chat. If you missed them, feel free to pull the chat open. The and okay, so I'll just go. There were a couple that I really liked. Somebody said that Billy said that they asked for the three best responses and then suggestions to like further those responses. And it sounded like those seemed like pretty solid answers. You also, Billy, said you said like, okay, try to group these, like folks who need the same, like maybe a similar revision, similar like intervention. And you said good examples, but like it couldn't like give like like a comprehensive list of like take all 100 responses and organize them. Really good, really good try. Yeah. So like what I like about that is like sometimes just having the right stuff in the right place, you try to push it maybe past what it can handle, and see what its limitations are. I noticed Joel sent me something where he basically was like trying to get it to make a graph or like one of the things we did for the discussion guide was a word cloud, and I'm pretty sure I used ChatGPT. Actually, I know I used ChatGPT for that. And ChatGPT can use tools that aren't in this tool. And so that that was a limitation that Joel hit. The I'm sorry, I'm reading it. So people asked about what supports for like students could use for the reading level. Wendy, did you did it okay, you asked about the average reading level of the writing. When do you have audio? Sorry, clarifying question. Like, but yeah, it sounds like Wendy asked about like the reading level of the writing samples. And it looks like it didn't really assess the samples, but it kind of suggested reading supports, which is interesting. And then of course sometimes like keep in mind it's AI, the language-based AI is like it'll sometimes give you an answer because that's what its job is, and the answer might be you need to validate like it might not be the right reading level, but it sounded confident. So one thing that I reflect on looking at this is just like there's a lot of stuff you can do in ChatGPT and like try to pull out answers and wrangle on your own, and that is a great thing to play with. And then there's also like some things that just end up harder in the teacher context than what ChatGPT is built for. So like a great example is the one you asked, Billy, about like, okay, so like group all these samples. And like I can think of ways that I might be able to even get ChatGPT to like do that in a few steps. But again, that's like developing skills of AI wrangling, as I call it. But like some of when we think about teachers and like what they can use for looking at their own student data, some of the problems come up that are like definitely not in the everyday use of ChatGPT. So some of it is like, oh, how do you break this into some steps to get the result out? Some of it might be, I figured out a good prompt to get strengths and areas for improvement from a student writing sample, but I have 100 of them. So it's like, yeah, I can put that in ChatGPT. Like I can put the instructions and put the student sample in, get an answer. But can I do that 100 times and then copy that into wherever I'm going to send it to the student so that they can get the feedback? And so those are some of the challenges that we see when we're trying to move up that path to using AI more for these really helpful things. And you can see them here where there's like some things that we've started to unlock, and then there's some things that are still there, right? Like it's not publishing to Google Classroom or Canvas yet or whatever. So those are some of the things that come up. Okay, so that is a little bit of like playing around with this tool. So one of our concepts of like having these workshops and then thinking about our own context is like, if you had a tool like this, how would you use it? And so imagine, because I think that this will be possible. Imagine you were going back to apps.eddolearning.com tomorrow and you brought your own data set. So like maybe it's just a spreadsheet of like student work samples that you exported from Google Classroom or Canvas or something like that. What data set would you want to look at, and what questions would you want to ask of that set of data? And this is popcorn style. So if you feel comfortable, turn your mic on and ask. You can definitely put it in the chat. You can even send it as a private message to Joel, and Joel will ask. But that's the question, is like, if you had a tool like this in your context, what samples would you look at? And then what kinds of summary and analysis, like high level questions, do you think you might want to look at, or your teams of teachers might want to look at? That's a lot of wait time.
Hey, Matt, there was one, it's not really, it's my question more, or at least I wanted to make sure that you did this with this data set. Most of these examples were handwritten. Is that correct?
This set came from a Google form. We did take handwritten ones and scan them. So we had a whole folder of scanned sheets, like handwritten like this. And for that, I think I just use, well, I do have a tool for transcribing them now. But the first step we took was just like pasted them in ChatGPT and asked it to make a transcript. I actually with iteration was able to get it to like make a table and make a CSV of the student responses. In the summer workshop, we actually had teachers just take a picture of their feedback for the day and send it to, like, email it to us or text, I can't remember. And then we just took all those pictures and we were able to like transcribe and do some summary and analysis across all of them right there at the end of the workshop. So we could be like, well, what do teachers find helpful? What do they still need for help? Does anybody else have like a data set that they look at? Like, I'm thinking about student journals. Like, I used to have like a huge milk crate full of journals I would try to take home every week and get through, turn them around and get back to class. Does anybody have like a place where students are giving them kind of more than they think than they've been able to keep up with, that you might want to know, like, where, strengths and areas for improvement across all of it, or a summary or analysis across all of it?
I was gonna say, one of the ways I would really love to use this. So I just had a department meeting about pacing in OpenSciEd, and one of the big pieces of feedback or complaints, however you want to say it, that my teachers had, is this idea that questions get asked over and over again, right? This idea of like the same question that you're asking in the anchoring phenomena lesson comes up again in lesson 4, comes up again in lesson 8, comes up again in lesson 12. And sometimes that's a do now, sometimes it's a formative assessment, sometimes it's a summative. I know from like a curriculum design perspective that that's happening because student thinking about that question should be shifting over time.
Right.
It go from a novice understanding to a slightly more advanced understanding to, a scientifically accurate understanding. And that's the data set I would love to see this tool sort of analyze, is like not just one assessment or assignment and as a snapshot, but like, can you give me a summary of student thinking changing over time?
Yeah, I think of that as like looking at things horizontally as I asked a question, what were all the answers? Or vertically, like how has Billy's thinking about this question changed over the last few weeks, over the, over
Yeah.
the school year? Somebody else was thinking vertically too, right? Like, what is the full context of this student that's answering this question? What are they doing in other classes? Where are they getting their literacy skills? Where are they in a business class? Are they applying these concepts to new areas of application? Yeah, that's really interesting. Thinking about like how to pull the right data together and then be able to ask that question.
Yeah,
Like, how has it
and
changed?
it's tough because the same question will show up 4 or 5 times, but in completely different formats, right? So that's
Mm-hmm.
where the data would be really like any sort of AI tool that's able to like look at, a class transcript, match that to the lesson that's happening on top of this other piece of like actually uploading student work samples. That would be the stuff that would really fascinate me.
Yeah, and a lot of folks in their surveys before coming to this, you talked about using AI on lesson planning and on like preparing or modify or adapting lessons. One of the things that I think might be an opportunity, like tying to formative assessment, is like which things that are still in this chapter should I highlight, right? They're already on my roadmap. I'm already doing planning, but when I decide what things to emphasize and what things we're already strong at, like maybe this kind of data can help us be like, okay, we're going to pause at this part of lesson 7 because clearly that's going to help a lot of students with this one hitch.
Something that we've talked about
Yeah.
too, just like as we've been thinking about um that elementary course you were asking about is kind of similar. We were thinking too, like, how could we take this basic concept and then also turn it so that it can be like an outward facing kind of like living portfolio to share with families about student progressing in different skills over time. So I don't know, just another application of like it's gotten my mind thinking about beyond just like direct feedback for teachers to help students or potentially to students directly to help, deepen their understanding and prepare them better for the next at bat with the same skill. I think that could also be like an outward facing reflection too.
Okay, so to wrap, I want to thank everybody for coming. I want to thank the Wauwatosa team for presenting, and I want to preview that we are going to do another one of these on lesson planning in OpenSciEd. We have a chat bot that knows everything about OpenSciEd, and we want to kind of like push that towards like what teachers are trying to do every day. So it's like, what if I had ChatGPT, but it knows OpenSciEd? And so that will be the next session probably. We're going to try to set that up in about a month. But I really am going to want to also hear from people like, what'd you get out of this? Like, what did you think you were going to see? Like, what did you actually see? Like, what do you like? Is this promising? Like, are you psyched? Would you do enough? Actually, there's enough people left. Like 5 is like, I want to lead the next one. 1 is like, I'll never be back. But like, how well did this fit for you? Like how, like, you like hold your hand up, I can see you. Like give me on your hand. Like 5 is like literally like I can run one of these, like I would like to be a host, like a presenter. 1 is like I already left. I hope they already did. But like where are you at right now in terms of excitement? Okay, cool. It's obviously a small sample, but like if there's enough people that like, hey, this has promise, we will. We'll at least do a few more of these and kind of see if we can, see how it develops and kind of if we can come together in our curiosity and say, well, what if we tried this and maybe try some stuff and I'll get the tool to do it. So thanks everybody. And hope to see you soon.